The United States owes over $34 trillion. Japan owes more than its entire economy produces in a year. France, Germany, the UK, Brazil, China, all of them deep in debt. Even countries you'd think are doing fine are sitting on mountains of borrowed money. So here's the question nobody seems to ask. Why? Why is basically every country on Earth in debt? Who do they owe that money to? And, maybe the most important question of all, what happens if they can't pay it back? Welcome, my name is Max, and today we're going to break down one of the most misunderstood topics in all of economics: government debt. By the end of this video, you'll understand something that most people, including most adults, never truly grasp. And trust me, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's get into it. Part 1. The basics. What is government debt? Really? Before we go deep, let's make sure we're on the same page about what government debt actually is, because most people have a completely wrong picture in their head. When you hear the US is $34 trillion in debt, your brain probably imagines something like a credit card bill. Like America borrowed money from some giant bank somewhere and now has to pay it back with interest. Simple, right? Not quite. Government debt, also called sovereign debt or national debt, is the total amount of money a government has borrowed over time and hasn't paid back yet. But here's where it gets interesting. Governments don't borrow money the way you and I do. They don't walk into a bank and ask for a loan. Instead, they issue what are called government bonds. Think of a bond like this. The government comes to you and says, "Hey, lend me $1,000. In 10 years, I'll give you back $1,100. You hand over the money, they give you a piece of paper, a bond, that says they owe you. That's it. That's the whole mechanism behind trillions of dollars of global debt. And who buys these bonds? Everyone. Other countries, big banks, pension funds, insurance companies, ordinary people, even foreign governments. When China holds US debt, it means China bought a bunch of US government bonds. China lent money to America, and America promised to pay it back with interest. So the first key thing to understand is, government debt isn't some shameful secret. It's a financial instrument, a tool, and almost every government in the world uses it. The real question is, why do they all use it so much? Part 2. Why governments borrow in the first place. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. And I want you to think about this carefully, because the answer might surprise you. Governments spend money, constantly, on roads, hospitals, schools, military, police, pensions, interest payments. The list goes on forever. To pay for all of this, governments collect taxes: income tax, corporate tax, sales tax, property tax, you name it, they tax it. But here's the problem. Spending almost always outpaces taxes. Why? Because governments face pressure from two directions at once. On one side, citizens want more services, better healthcare, better infrastructure, more social safety nets. On the other side, nobody wants to pay more taxes. That's the fundamental political tension that has existed for centuries, and it's never going away. So, when a government needs more money than it collects in taxes, which is called running a deficit, it has two real options. Option 1, cut spending. Option 2, borrow. And cutting spending? Politically, it's almost impossible. You try telling voters you're cutting their pensions, their healthcare, their public services. See how that goes at the next election. So governments borrow, again and again, year after year. And each year, the deficit adds to the total pile of debt. Now here's a concept you need to understand: the difference between a deficit and debt. A deficit is what you borrow in a single year. Debt is the total amount accumulated over all the years. If a government runs a $500 billion deficit every year for 10 years, the debt grows by $5 trillion. Simple math, enormous consequences. The US, for example, has been running deficits almost every single year since the 1970s. That's over 50 years of spending more than it earns, 50 years of borrowing. That's how you get to $34 trillion. Part 3. The historical events that created modern debt mountains. Now, to really understand why debt is so high today, we need to talk about a few massive historical moments that changed the game completely. Because here's the truth. Government debt isn't just about politicians spending recklessly. Sometimes the world forces their hand. Wars. This is the biggest one. Wars are unbelievably expensive. World War II, for instance, caused the US national debt to explode to over 100% of GDP, meaning the country owed more than its entire annual economic output. Britain was even worse. After World War II, the UK's debt was around 250% of GDP. They were still paying off World War II debt until 2015. Let that sink in. 70 years to pay off a single conflict. Economic crises. The 2008 financial crisis is a perfect example. When the global banking system almost collapsed, governments around the world had to step in with massive bailouts and stimulus packages. The US alone spent hundreds of billions bailing out banks and injecting money into the economy. Where did that money come from? Borrowing. Debt went through the roof practically overnight. And then, just as many countries were starting to recover from 2008, along came COVID-19, the pandemic. In 2020, governments globally spent an absolutely astronomical amount of money to keep their economies alive. Stimulus checks, business loans, furlough schemes, healthcare spending, vaccine programs. The IMF estimated that governments around the world spent over $16 trillion in response to COVID. $16 trillion in roughly 2 years. Almost all of it borrowed. Global debt hit a record $226 trillion in 2021. That's not a typo. $226 trillion. Across all countries, all governments, all sectors. The pandemic basically took a debt problem that was already serious and made it look like a completely different category of issue. So when people ask, why is everyone in debt? The honest answer is, because history keeps happening. Wars, crises, pandemics. These events require governments to spend money they don't have right now and deal with the consequences later. Part 4. The debt spiral. Why it keeps growing. Here's the part that most people never think about. The part that, once you understand it, makes the whole system feel a little bit like a trap. When you borrow money, you pay interest. That's true for you, for me, for businesses, and for governments. And when you're a government carrying trillions in debt, that interest payment becomes enormous. The United States currently spends over $800 billion per year just on interest payments, not paying down the debt, just paying the interest. That number recently surpassed the entire US defense budget. Think about that. America spends more money on debt interest than on its entire military. And here's the spiral. Because governments are spending so much on interest, they have less money for everything else. So when the next crisis hits, or when they need to build new infrastructure, or when healthcare costs rise, they have to borrow more to cover those costs, which means more debt, which means more interest, which means even less money available, which means even more borrowing. It's a cycle, and once you're deep enough in it, it becomes very hard to escape. This is why economists talk about the concept of debt sustainability. The question isn't just, how much do you owe? The question is, can you manage the payments? As long as a country's economy is growing, fast enough as long as interest rates are low enough, the debt remains manageable. The problem comes when growth slows or interest rates rise, both of which have been happening in recent years. After 2022, when central banks around the world started hiking interest rates to fight inflation, borrowing costs for governments jumped dramatically. Debt that was manageable at 1% interest suddenly became a lot more painful at 4% or 5%. Overnight, the interest bill on existing debt shot up. This is hitting developing countries particularly hard, but even wealthy nations are feeling it. Part 5. Who actually owns the debt? Okay, so we've established that governments borrow. We've established that debt keeps growing. But let's answer one of the most common questions people have. Who do they owe all this money to? Because people often imagine there's some shadowy creditor sitting in a room somewhere waiting to collect. That's not how it works. Government debt is owned by a huge variety of actors. Let's break it down. First, and this surprises a lot of people, governments often owe a large chunk of their debt to themselves. What does that mean? Through entities like central banks, social security funds, and government pension funds. The U.S. Federal Reserve, for example, holds trillions in U.S. government bonds. Technically, the U.S. government owes money to its own central bank. It's a bit like owing money to yourself. Strange, but real. Second, domestic investors, banks, insurance companies, investment funds, and ordinary citizens within the country. When your pension fund buys government bonds, your retirement savings are helping fund government spending. You are, in a small way, a creditor to your government. Third, foreign governments and investors. This is the part people find most dramatic. Japan and China, for instance, are among the largest foreign holders of U.S. debt. They hold hundreds of billions in U.S. Treasury bonds. In return, they earn interest paid by American taxpayers. It's a global financial web, and every major economy is both a lender and a borrower to some degree. So the idea that there's one country that owns another because of debt is a massive oversimplification. The reality is much more interconnected, and in some ways, that interconnection is what keeps the whole system stable. Part 6. What happens when a country can't pay? Now we get to the scary part. The part people actually want to know. What happens when it all goes wrong? The technical term is sovereign default, when a country can no longer make payments on its debt. And it does happen. It's happened throughout history, and it's happening even today in some parts of the world. Argentina has defaulted on its national debt 9 times. 9. The most recent was in 2020. Greece came extremely close to default during the European debt crisis in the early 2010s. Sri Lanka defaulted in 2022, leading to severe food and fuel shortages and political chaos. Lebanon's currency collapsed after its default in 2020. The consequences were devastating for ordinary people. Savings wiped out, inflation spiraling, basic goods disappearing. When a country defaults, the effects cascade. Its currency crashes, making imports, including food and medicine, far more expensive. Inflation skyrockets, unemployment rises, foreign investment flees. The government loses access to credit markets, meaning it can't borrow anymore, which often makes spending cuts unavoidable. And those cuts hit the most vulnerable people hardest. For rich countries, true default is extremely rare because they have powerful tools to avoid it. The most important? Their own currency. Here's a concept that blows people's minds when they first hear it. If you owe debt in your own currency, you can technically always pay it back. Why? Because you can print more money. The US owes dollars. It controls the dollar. It can always print more dollars to make payments. That sounds like a magic trick, right? But it's not free. Printing too much money causes inflation. Prices rise, the currency loses value, and ordinary people's purchasing power gets eroded. It's a hidden tax on everyone. So even this escape route has costs. This is one reason why developing countries are in such a fragile position. Many of them owe debt in dollars, a currency they don't control. So if their local currency weakens, their debt burden in dollar terms gets heavier. It's a trap with no clean exit. Part 7. Is debt always bad? Here's the question that trips a lot of people up, because they assume the answer is obviously yes. But it's more nuanced than that. Debt, used wisely, is a tool for growth. If a government borrows money to build highways that reduce transportation costs for businesses, that investment can pay for itself many times over in economic growth. If it borrows to fund education, that creates a more productive workforce that generates more tax revenue for decades. If it borrows to fund life-saving medical research, the returns to society are immeasurable. The problem isn't debt itself. The problem is unproductive debt. Borrowing to cover day-to-day spending or to pay for things that generate no long-term return, or borrowing so much that the interest payments themselves become a drag on the economy. Economists often use a concept called debt to GDP ratio to measure whether a country's debt is sustainable. GDP is the total size of a country's economy. If debt is 30% of GDP, that's manageable. If it's 100% of GDP, that's concerning. If it's 250% of GDP, which is where Japan is today, that's in territory that would be disastrous for most countries, though Japan's unique economic structure has so far allowed it to survive. The key insight is this: it's not just about how much you owe. It's about what you borrowed for and whether your economy is growing fast enough to handle the payments. Part 8. The future. Where does this all go? All right, let's wrap up with the big picture. Because after everything we've covered, you're probably asking, so what happens next? Is this system sustainable? Is there a breaking point? The honest answer is we don't know. And that's not a cop-out. Nobody does. What we do know is that demographic trends are going to make this harder. In most developed countries, populations are aging. That means more people drawing pensions and using healthcare and fewer young workers paying taxes to fund it. Japan is the extreme case, a country where the population is actually shrinking. But most of Europe and North America are headed in the same direction. This means government spending is almost certain to rise, while the tax base stagnates or shrinks. More debt is essentially baked into the future of most wealthy nations. At the same time, the challenges of the next century, climate change, energy transition, geopolitical competition, technological disruption, all require massive investment. Infrastructure needs to be rebuilt. Power grids need to be transformed. Defense budgets are rising again across Europe. All of this costs money governments don't have. Some economists argue the solution is growth, that innovation and productivity gains can grow economies fast enough to make existing debt manageable, just as happened after World War II. Others argue that debt restructuring, negotiating with creditors to extend payments or reduce amounts, is inevitable for many countries. Others still argue for more aggressive taxation of wealth and corporations to bring government revenues in line with spending. None of these are easy. All of them involve trade-offs. And in a world of short election cycles, long-term solutions to long-term problems are genuinely difficult to implement. So, let's bring it all home. Almost every country on Earth is in debt, because running a modern government is enormously expensive, because history keeps forcing spending spikes that taxes can never fully cover, because debt is politically easier than cutting services or raising taxes, and because once the cycle starts, deficits, debt, interest, more borrowing, it's remarkably hard to stop. It's not a conspiracy. It's not unique stupidity. It's a structural feature of how modern states operate in a world full of crises, competition, and human needs that never stop growing. The question isn't whether governments should have zero debt. That's a fantasy. The question is whether the debt is being used productively, whether it's sustainable, and whether the people making the decisions are thinking past the next election cycle. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. Government debt isn't some abstract number on a screen somewhere. It's a promise made by governments today that will be paid through taxes, through inflation, through sacrifices, by people who haven't even been born yet. And whether that promise leads to a better world or a more broken one depends entirely on what the borrowed money was used for. That's the game. Now you know how it's played. If this video made you think differently about money, governments, or the global economy, drop a comment below. I genuinely read them. And if you want to go deeper on topics like this, inflation, the Federal Reserve, why currencies collapse, make sure you're subscribed because that content is coming. See you in the next one.